All right, we're joined now by Mark Dennebaum. Mark is a candidate for Scranton School Board, and he is cross-filed on both the Republican and the Democratic tickets. Welcome. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for thinking of me and having me. I really appreciate it.
So we're going to jump right into the questions.
Okay.
And my first question is about what makes the world go round, and that's money.
Oh.
So the question for you is, equitable funding from the state continues to be an issue. Please share your knowledge of the issue and describe how you can impact this as a school director.
I think it's not a big secret that the Scranton School District has been underfunded for quite some time. I think a lot of strides have been taken over the last few years to get that fair funding. There's a lawsuit that apparently a bunch of districts have won, and now we have to wait and see how they release that money. Now, everyone I've talked to has said that the moment that that money is allocated to the Scranton School District, it's almost like a whole new world, to use a Disney term, for all the students and the employees and the administration. I think it's imperative that that happens. I think that there is no doubt that over the last few years, learning has gone down and literacy has gone down. And I think that that money could be allocated to get our students back to the place where they need to be. I just read a study where it said 1/3 of United States school children are not at the level they should be in literacy. And I believe that that is a major problem. So fingers crossed that hopefully that money is given to the school district sooner rather than later, so that we can start working on a better future for our students and all of the employees there.
Okay. The next question, equally important topic, is safety.
Mm-hmm.
What is the role the school board plays in ensuring the safety of our children?
My mother was an educator in the Scranton School District for about 20 years, or over 20 years, and I think safety is paramount for all of our children. One of the reasons why I decided to get into this process is because of I don't know if you remember, but a young man was unfortunately murdered last year, and that should not happen in our area. So I think that was an eye-opening experience for a lot of people to be, safety is of utmost concern. Children are our future. They are the ones who will hold the torch for us going forward. And if we don't protect them and we don't give them a good education, we should all be very ashamed of that. So I'm very happy that they're taking school safety seriously. I think when you have a safe environment, you have a better learning environment, because no one's nervous about what's outside and what's inside, more importantly. So I would absolutely be a staunch supporter of making sure that every child in every school is as safe as they can possibly be.
Okay, thank you. This next question is a two-part question.
Oh boy, okay.
Starts with, closing a school is a hard decision to make. So the first part, what factors should be considered when you have to vote on a closure? And the second part is, what factors should not be considered when you're voting on a closure?
I might ask you for that second part again.
Okay.
So the first part is should be considered.
Mm-hmm.
I think the first thing that should be considered is to not close a school. Neighborhoods, my mother and father are both from West Side. They grew up on opposite sides of St. Anne Street. And they both had their neighborhood schools that they went to, even though they were 2 blocks away. I think that it is why do schools close? There's a lot of factors to that. A lot of the times it's mismanagement or not playing with your money as you should. I think that should be the absolute last option for anybody, any district to do. And the second thing is what we should not.
What shouldn't you consider when you're voting to close a school?
That's a more difficult thing because, what you shouldn't consider is closing the school. I couldn't even consider what I wouldn't consider as not closing a school, because you shouldn't do it. So
Okay.
I mean, I don't know if that's a really polished answer. I just feel like closing schools is a terrible thing to do, especially since we got a lot of COVID money. And we should probably take a look at how that money got spent and where it's going or where it's allocated to, so that we can best ensure that it's going to be spent wisely, number one, for education, and number two, for the safety of our students.
Okay. The next question is about transportation. Lots of questions come up about transportation, and when I'm talking about that, I'm talking simply about getting kids to and from school. That's all.
Okay.
So again, a two-part question. Discuss any changes that you believe are needed to the district's policy on transportation for students. And again, the same thing, what factors need to be considered when you're voting for that change?
I recently heard a story, and the story is that there was a friend of mine has a friend whose daughter has been to 4 schools in the Scranton school district in the last year. They keep moving her from school to school to school to school. I think because of closing the schools, you have now created a very temperamental transportation problem. I have a very good friend who actually does transportation in a different school district, and I've talked to him many times about how difficult that having that responsibility is. I don't think people realize the burden some of the transportation companies take, where you know they're still looking out for the safety of our children up until that they get to the bus stop. So it's a domino effect. So once you close a school, you have to find out where you're going to put those kids. Now, some of those kids are going out of their neighborhood and they're going to schools that they're not familiar with. Now, this example I gave you, this young woman made friends at one school, thought she was okay, made friends at another school, thought she was okay, made friends at another school, thought she was okay, and now they want to move her again. I mean, that just sows chaos. And the response that was given to the father was it was policy. I don't know the proper answer for that besides don't close the schools, because then you don't have a transportation safety issue. These kids are unfamiliar with their neighborhood playmates. They're unfamiliar with their friends. And it's hard enough for me to walk into a room and make new friends. I can't imagine these kids going into a school trying to make new friends and then getting them taken away from them. So yeah, I hope that answered your question a little bit, but the transportation issue is a problem.
Okay. The next question, the overall topic is banning something, okay? Mm-hmm. So two-part question again. What should go into a process or a decision if a call to ban books or critical race theory or anything is floated before the school board from any direction, wherever it might come from? And the second part of that question is, are these decisions up to the board?
I don't know if this answer will be popular, but I highly believe in free speech. I highly believe in not banning anything. The only thing that gets rid of bad ideas is better ideas. And I believe that the political discourse of late is not very conducive to progress. As far of the book banning, I'm assuming you're talking about other states, because I'm not familiar with any banning that the Scranton School District has done, and I would highly be against that. I will put a caveat on that, is that, you know, the most important thing is that we teach our children how to think, not what to think. I know it's a hot button issue in America these days, but I think the more we can talk to each other, the more we can have conversations, especially about things that we don't necessarily agree on, because somewhere in there is a compromise. And I think it gets very politically divisive when, you know, when one side says yes, one side says no, and then you pick your corners and no one will come to the middle of the field to shake hands and try to figure out what to do. I'm highly against banning books. Some of the things, I'm assuming what you're talking about, some of those things, the parents do have concerns, and those parents should be listened to. At least hear them out for their concerns, because then at least you know what their point of view is, instead of thinking that they're something, you know, that may not be true. So I'm highly against banning books. I'm also not for giving inappropriate books to children. I think we can all agree on what those are. So yeah, I can't. The biggest fear I would ever have in my life is in Scranton, Pennsylvania, to see people sitting around a fire burning books. That would be terrifying to me, or banning them. but I am not for that at all.
Okay. I have one more question for you.
Shoot.
This one has a bit of an introduction, and then I'll ask the questions at the
Okay.
end, okay?
Yep.
Per legislation that was passed in April of 2022, the Pennsylvania Department of Education must integrate culturally relevant and sustaining education competencies into educator preparation, so teacher preparation, induction, and continuing professional development, no later than the 23-24 academic year. And there are 9 competencies, but I'm not going to read all of them because they have really long names, but they're like talking about your cultural lens and equitable and differentiated opportunities, culturally relevant learning, microaggressions, so things like that. There are 9 different competencies. So 2 questions that I have. What impact does or will this have on our teachers and our students? And what role will the school board have in ensuring compliance with this state law?
I think anytime you bring something new in, it's very difficult for people. It takes a bit of time for that to manifest itself into what they see as results. I'm not entirely familiar with that, and I have to plead ignorance on it. Can you ask the first part of that again about what the bill that was passed is called?
It's called Culturally Relevant and Sustaining Education Competencies. They refer to it as CRSE.
I'm assuming that's about broadening different cultures to students.
To teachers.
To teachers.
To teachers.
I wasn't aware of their ignorance on culture, so I don't know if it's an issue. My mother, as a teacher, the only thing that I can say about that, as far as anecdotally how I've experienced it, is that those schools had incredibly diverse people. Different cultures, societies. I believe there's over 60 languages spoken in the Scranton School District, which is very difficult for people who only speak one language. I think it's beautiful to be exposed to other cultures. I think it's beautiful to talk about different ways of living and different, let's take soccer, for instance. Most other else places it's called football. We call it soccer. I still don't understand why. But I believe it's incredibly important. The school board, I don't know enough about it to say how it would be implemented, because we have so many different personalities that would be on that school board. And I just read an interesting quote that in the forest of 10,000 trees, all leaves are different. So we have to be aware of that. I believe having conversations with everybody is the way to have that be a non-negative impact and make it a positive impact on everybody. Okay. I hope I answered that right for you.
So that ends our time with my questions anyway. But you have 2 minutes now to speak to the voters about your platform, your campaign, anything you want to cover.
I wasn't prepared for that. I'm not very good at stumping, if that's what they call it. I grew up in Green Ridge. I moved to Orlando, Florida in 2004, went to school down there, lived in Los Angeles for about 5 years, moved back here, started my own business. My mother was an educator, like I said, for over 20 years. I've been intimately involved with conversations amongst many educators about what they see as problems and good things that they're doing. I believe that now that we're getting out of receivership, it's time to focus on education. And I think that's the most important thing that we can do, is to focus on education. We can't deny the learning loss over the last 3 years. We can't deny the mental health issues that we have going on right now. I believe in truth. This might sound very corny, but I believe in truth and hope. And I think that people need to be told what's wrong, what's right, and that there is a way forward. It's not doom and gloom. There's a lot of people around here who are a little cynical about the school board, and I would like them to know that if elected, I hope I can reduce their cynicism a little bit, and they can feel really good about their vote, because number one is kids, number one. And if you lose sight of that, I don't know how we recover from it. Children are the most precious thing in the world, and we have to make sure that, number one, they're taken care of, in a proper way. They're educated and prepared for life in a proper way, and that they don't end up being cynical too. They need to have a little bit of hope.
All right, at that, thank you so much to Mark Dennebaum.
Thank
we
you.
appreciate your time today. Mark is cross-filed on the both Democratic and Republican tickets for Scranton School Director, so people of both parties will be able to vote for him on May 16th. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you very much for having me.